you, Tasmina, for that glowing introduction. I just hope I can live up to this. Today, it's a pleasure to be with such distinguished guests. As a former MP, you find yourself in lots of situations where there's new learning. And this was the case when, in 2020, I was asked to take on chairing of the Digital Assets and Cryptocurrency Group, the first one of its kind in the UK House of Commons. And this came about when I had a constituent who had lost some money in what I now know is called a rug pull scam, and contacted me saying, how do I get redress? How can I, get my funds recovered? So I said to him, it could be a fortunate thing I said, in fact I think it is now, but at the time it landed me in hot water with a lot of work, as these things do with constituents. So I said, I will find out for you in the Parliament who is doing this work. And then I started to search, and at that point there had been no debates whatsoever in the House of Commons on cryptocurrency. So I thought perhaps this is a one-off situation, not very common for my constituent. Then we started to look at the research, and at that point in time in the UK, way back 2020, around 4 million people were already involved in the sector. So this was astonishing to us, that there were so many people in the UK engaged in the sector, and yet we weren't discussing it in the Parliament. Knowledge was so limited. We were behind the public in a sense. We started the APPG at that time, and then from that moment on, most of my time in the Parliament was spent developing the work that we were doing alongside amazing people, Lord Taylor, Baroness Uden, Lord Ranger, who you'll also meet this afternoon, and many more. We started bringing people in from industry to educate the members of Parliament, which was something in itself. And I always remember people would say to me, isn't this industry full of cowboys? Well, I would say, of course, all industries have good and bad actors. Then one day I went down to security to pick up my guest for the day, who happened to actually be someone very prominent in the industry, all dressed in a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. And I thought, the industry doesn't engage with Parliament very often and, doesn't think about how it presents itself. Well, for the whole day, we had our meetings, and then I gave them a tour of Parliament. And all of the MPs at the end were saying, was that Kid Rock that you had in Parliament today? So it brought some eventualities. Then when we were doing our education programme, bringing in lots of very important organisations who were developing in cryptocurrency and digital assets in the UK and applying for regulation, I noticed there was a communication barrier, in a sense, to the work we were doing. So they came in and they would be speaking about Bitcoin and speaking about blockchain, speaking about CeFi and DeFi, speaking about fiat. And I remember sitting in the room and someone mentioned fiat, and one of the lords said, that's a type of car, so I know what we're talking about now today in the room. And I realised that we had a lot of learning to do, but also that there was some kind of misnomer between the communication of the industry and parliamentarians, and that they weren't used to engaging like traditional industries had. So much of our time was spent developing our understanding, coming out of Parliament as well, speaking at conferences, learning about what was happening. And the more you learned, the more was happening. It's a very fast-moving industry. And that really led to the debates that we had in the Parliament, the first inquiry report between both the House of Commons and House of Lords on cryptocurrency and the UK as a potential hub, and the work that we were doing in terms of making sure that we were reaching out to parliamentarians and policymakers, because people were being asked to legislate and to take decisions on very important matters that perhaps we all had very limited understanding of. One of the very pivotal things that happened was when my dear friend Baroness Uden had the Children's Parliament come to meet with us. The children aged round about 10 or 11, I think, up to the age of 15. Is that correct? She's nodding. That's correct. Who represent many different areas of the United Kingdom. And they were sitting in the room with the Lords, with the MPs, and the Roblox man came, and I do know a bit about Roblox because I have teenagers, so I spend a lot of money on Roblox, so we all wanted to speak to him. But he came and he said, one of his first questions, put your hand up if you've heard of Web3. The children's hands all come into the air. Hardly any MPs' hands in the air, hardly any members of the House of Lords. We all had our hands a bit like this. And then I realised, not only is this a fast-paced moving industry, but we're on the cusp of a digital revolution because our children are all digitally native. So this isn't something that's going to be reversed. And I think our conversations in Parliament from this pivotal time changed from being, should we be doing this, should we be engaged with this industry, to actually, this is happening. So we have to be engaged with this industry and we have to learn. And we stepped up our education programmes at that point. Now, as everyone knows in democracies, what happens is you spend a lot of time educating people and then they don't get re-elected, so you have to start again with the next group. And this has meant that our programmes are ongoing, and I don't really see that we will discontinue them because, as I said, industry is always changing. There's always more to learn and more engagement to have. So I've been busier than ever since I stepped down from Parliament in 2024. We've been taking members of Parliament and members of the House of Lords over to other jurisdictions because the other very important thing about this industry is it's global. What happens in the UK is not going to be the only thing that happens in this industry because it's about cross borders. It's about interoperability at the end of the day and shared standards. And those are going to be extremely important to develop. So far we've had members of Parliament out at the European Parliament, over in the Senate in the US. We've also had members of Parliament over in the Senate in Spain, and in the coming year we hope to be in Germany and Italy, back in the US, and having colleagues back to the House of Lords and House of Commons again to continue this collaboration, because it's fantastic when MPs learn from each other as well as industry about what's happening in different jurisdictions so that we can try to develop some shared understanding and shared standards, and also together tackle some of the issues that arise, because they don't just arise in one jurisdiction. So this work has become extremely pivotal. I feel that it is the most important thing that I have actually done in the Parliament, and I'm indebted to the industry for all of the support that the industry gave me in my role and has continued to do. We continue to host our events, and we continue to reach out to more parliaments, more parliamentarians, and Baroness Uden and I, through the Digital Assets Global Legislators Forum, continue to build on this knowledge that is developing amongst our policymakers, which is very, very crucial, so that we get what works legislation. Legislation that is light touch enough for innovation, but as Baroness Uden had mentioned so carefully, that it also has to be responsible, and it also has to have consumer protection at its core, just like my constituent, who I always go back to in my mind at the very start of my journey. So thank you for having me speak here briefly today. If you want to continue to engage in this work that we're doing, then please do reach out. We are only happy to help. We really have a passion to help policymakers develop their knowledge and understanding and continue this work globally. And we want to help as many to come on board as possible. And we want to learn from you too and from your experiences. In crypto, every day is a learning day. And it has been a fantastic journey so far, and I look forward to working with each of you and to taking this collaboration to new heights. So thank you so much.